Tancred could only watch in horror as Jamie's body was tossed aside. His jacket had been torn to shreds, his golden hair now a tapestry of mud and blood. The beast turned to the Grand Master with hate-filled eyes. It huffed and charged. Tancred stood up and held his submachine gun by the stock as if it were a bat. At least it would be useful as a bludgeon. Tancred had prepared for death since he had become a squire at the age of 14, but death by bear was not how he expected to go out. Adrenaline pumped through him as he readied his swing. Suddenly, a burst of energy bolts buzzed past him. The bear groaned in pain and thudded to the ground, stopping an inch before the Astral Warden. Tancred spun on his heel to see Fafnir looking down the sights of his mysterious rifle. The barrel hissed a thick cloud of white fog. The Zen let the rifle drop on its sling and rushed to the side of Jamie. "I need a medic. Doctor, where are you?" Tancred looked at the body of the bear, writhing in agony. Each of the energy bolts had pierced through the beast's thick flesh into the bone. The entry points of each energy bolt were rapidly becoming necrosed, turning black. The blood that seeped out was thick and almost gelatinous. "What is that gun?" "Not now, War Chief." "Here, lad, you're going to be okay. Stay with me." Fafnir's tactical jacket had a few emergency bandages stowed away that were rapidly being tied around Jamie's bleeding torso. The lad pushed the Zen away. He crawled for the plasteel sword. Clutching it, he made his agonizing way back to Tancred. "Here's your sword, my lord." Jamie collapsed on top of the writhing bear. Fafnir grabbed Tancred's gun and gave it a quick look over. "I thought you were some sort of warrior. You didn't depressurize the firing chamber when we landed." A quick slap and a hiss of air, and the gun was back to normal. The Zen picked up Jamie and headed for the lean-to shelter. "Kill the bear and help me out here." There were 2 pops from the now working gun as Fafnir kicked open the shelter door. Dr. Varlin sat at her desk with a soldering tool and a circuit board. "Quiet, please. Some of us are working." "Did you not hear a thing? The guns, the bear, Jamie getting mauled?" The doctor rolled her eyes and looked up from her work. "Oh, I see. He'll pull through." "Pull through? Are you mad? This boy is bleeding to death in my arms." "We have to ration what little resources we have if we're ever to get off this rock." "Jamie jumped in front of a bear for your war chief. He grows your food and then cooks it. Without him we'd starve. But he's just expendable." "I'm busy, Zen." Carla returned to her work as Fafnir placed Jamie on one of the mattresses. There was a thrumming of his energy rifle powering up. Carla looked up at the shack wall slowly.
"Think very carefully about what you're about to do."
"Surgery. Now." Tancred came into the shelter and stepped between them. "By the damn tone, Carla, treat the boy." Carla let out a heavy, sarcastic sigh as she got to her feet and fetched her tools. Tancred pushed the barrel of the Zen's energy rifle to the cave floor. "And you, outsider, don't you ever point a gun at my people again, or the treaties between your people and mine are null and void. Do you understand?" The Zen glared at the pair of humans, but nodded. The gun powered down as he holstered it over his shoulder. Fafnir shouldered Tancred moodily as he went to help the doctor. Carla knelt down beside Jamie and began to cut away at his ruined jacket. Jamie had managed to pull his treasured scarf off and put it to one side.
"There is a dog in the cabin, by the way. If you're going to get it, bring back a bottle of chloromorphone I stockpiled with the rest of the medicine, please."
Tancred took light steps down the cavern he and Fafnir had spent the last few days digging. Sitting in one corner was the German shepherd that had eluded Tancred for so many days. "Hello, pretty girl." The dog snarled and rolled its ears back. Tancred got down on his knees and approached slowly. Jamie's screams of agony echoed through the shelter and into the valley, making the dog jump. "It's okay. You're okay. I'm not gonna hurt you. Don't you recognize me?" The dog stomped on the spot anxiously and whined, tucking its tail between its legs. "Come here, Rebecca. You're safe now." The High Paladin reached into his pocket and retrieved a piece of dried meat that he'd been saving for himself. Upon hearing her name and the temptation of food, Rebecca cautiously approached. It took several attempts, but eventually Tancred had coaxed her out of the dark cave. Tancred returned to see Fafnir holding Jamie down as the doctor worked. Do you remember the dog that the Grand Master used to have, Rebecca?
There is no way that mutt is her. The thing looked like it hadn't eaten in a week.
She probably hasn't. Don't worry, I'll take care of her. She's just scared and probably a little traumatized, but she'll remember her old self again. Their night was a sleepless one. Jamie screamed until his throat was raw, despite being given copious amounts of painkillers. The final diagnosis was 4 broken ribs on his right side, 7 cracked across both, a punctured right lung, and a slew of deep lacerations. Tancred distracted himself from the screaming by skinning the bear. It would make a gorgeous pelt in the winter, if they lived that long. As the sun rose the next morning over the mountains, Tancred saw a bushy red and black tail moving around the grasses. He smiled to himself. If a fox was out, that meant summertime. A quiet moment leant up against the now hanging bear skin, a wily fox scavenging, the morning birds singing through the fog. It was almost poetic. Fafnir stepped out of the shelter, dressed in only his shirts and slacks. His entire torso was caked with blood. We almost lost him a couple of times, but he should live. I pray to the spirits that an infection will not kill him. Fafnir shambled over to a well they had dug in the previous days and pulled up a bucket. He stripped down and threw it over his head, scrubbing off the grime. I didn't know you had medical experience. I was a commando for 20 years. Everyone had to learn field medicine. Tancred nodded and reached into his pocket. He fished out a handful of animal claws. I'm not sure if your people do this, but it's an old human tradition to take a trophy for killing a beast, like the bear. You deserve the claws. Give them to Jamie. He's the one who charged the beast. But you dealt the killing blow. Fafnir waved them away and continued to scrub. The High Paladin shrugged, putting the claws back. Can we talk about your gun now? Oh, you mean the Kitrimordia. You do realize translator chips don't translate proper nouns, right? It is, how do you say? It is, a frost cannon, yes. It's an anti-insectoid weapon that my clan invented. Just a squad with these can clear a nest with minimal risk. And so you came to the New Thebes temple to sell us the design. The Zen nodded. The High Paladin whistled in contemplation. Such a weapon would mark a monumental turn in the eternal crusade of the Astral Wardens. How many planets had the endless horde consumed? How many millions of lives had been cut short? It didn't matter what species you were, everyone lived in fear of the insectoids. Perhaps if the Astral Wardens were armed with these frost cannons, the Kitrimoria, this might finally be the first step humanity took to defeating their vile foe. It is still in the first stages and needs improvements in terms of canister capacity, but the clans have come to realize that of all the major powers in space, your knights are the only ones seriously fighting the bugs. How about we focus on getting off this damned rock first, then we can talk politics. The following days were tense and somber. The 3 of the crash landers who were still on their feet were on a constant rotation of watching Jamie and changing his bandages. It was under the care of Fafnir that he was able to escape an infection, and his broken bones were fast on the mend.
Well, you're up again, I see.
Jamie was hobbling around outside the shelter, appreciating the sunlight. Oi, it sure hurts to move and breathe, but
there's animals that need butchering and trees that need felling. Get to work.
Yes, my lady. Jamie sighed sadly and hobbled back inside. It was true. A small pile of rats and squirrels had been piled up on a metal sheet, which was their improvised cutting board. Every movement, every breath was agonizing for Jamie as he labored. The farmer whimpered, just rotating meat sticks over the fire. Look at this! The mighty bear slayer. I've seen soldiers in hospital for longer with wounds lighter than you. Fafnir looked up from where he was laying down bricks made from the mined slate. Jamie smiled meekly and dug his knife into the slack skin of a squirrel. I don't have the luxury of resting in bed. I's got to keep helping you lords and the lady. I am not a lord, young pup. I'm just a soldier. Anyway, here. The Zen handed Jamie a strip of leather that had a set of bear claws looped through it. Your war chief tells me your kind collect trophies from felled beasts. These are yours. You deserve it after the courage of facing down a bear and living to tell the story. You have stones, lad. Jamie took the amulet and stared at it. He could still see some of his own blood staining the white claws. Is something wrong? Do you not like it? Oh no, it's not that, my lord. He's just got my scarf already. It means a lot to me, you know. I don't want to put it aside. I see. Well, I suppose you could wear it as a bracelet.
And done.
The doctor had been working on her bench, piecing together her new invention. She got to her feet and called out to Tancred. When the High Paladin entered the shack, there was a look of surprise written on his face, seeing Jamie on his feet.
Here.
Dr. Valen handed out 2 small circuit boards with a button on them. A stick had been taped to it and copper wire wrapped around. What's this?
Shortwave radio transponders. We should be able to communicate with each other whilst in the valley. Just don't touch the terminals on the power pack.
As she gave the warning, Fafnir yelped. A volt of electricity ran through his arm. The Zen dropped the radio from his flapping hand. Jamie was swift on the catch, grabbing it by the battery. You dropped this, my lord? Jamie's entire body convulsed as he handed the radio back. Despite the violent amount of voltage in his body, he seemed unfazed. I like your ticklers.
Jamie, how aren't you in pain at the moment?
I had to take care of the greyhounds at the old temple, my lady. They like to get zappy when they're happy or when they're watering. Bun dogs, greyhounds. Next you are going to tell me that you Astral Wardens ride thrombos into battle. You know, that was actually something that the temple on Myrtle 4 experimented with. However, they're very difficult to train, slow breeding, volatile, tend to kill anything that just so much as looks at them dirty. Wasn't really a great project. What's a trombone?
Anyway, this will help us keep in quick communication while you two, Tancred and Fafnir, are out and about. Our manpower is extremely limited, and thus each of us is a precious commodity.
Even me? Unfortunately so, yes. Just keep the fire alive. I'm going hunting. The High Paladin properly armed his weapon and went out. The trek was now routine to him. He noticed that dozens of felled trees were being cut into logs and rammed into the stinking bog waters. Smaller pieces were lashed across the gaps between them. A bridge. It was an ambitious project, but it would increase their traversal around the valley tenfold. Today, there was something different about the smell of the swamp. It wasn't just the usual sulfur and methane. Today, there was smoke. He looked north. Sure enough, a pillar of black smoke rose from the ground. "Come check," Tancred said into his little radio.
I am reading you, High Paladin. Testing complete.
Carla responded on a buzzed voice. "I see smoke. We have company. Going to investigate." The High Paladin moved between the trees, squelching ankle deep in the muck. He rounded mountains until he saw the source. There were 2 humans huddled around a fire. Only, they weren't human. Not exactly. From a distance, their skin was coloured a deep green and blue, respectively. They had bony frills and horns instead of hair. Their skin was scaled, and thick tails hung from their backs. Swords. There's 2 of them.
What are swords doing here? Carla asked. I'm not surprised about xenohumans, but you'd think lizards? In this kind of climate? They should be in the desert, shouldn't they? What are they doing?
Tancred scooched closer in the scrub, cupping his hand to his ear. There was a lot of hissing and psyching each other up, and talking in a strange manner. We'll be rich. The boss will promote us for sure if we find them. Can't wait to see what loot they have. It won't be a challenge after that crash land. I bet they're dead already. Tancred was quoting back what his translated chip was telling him. We're under attack. Falling back to your position. As the High Paladin got to his feet, a stick beneath his boot snapped. Both swords' heads swiveled towards him. Uh-oh. Tancred hightailed it back to the outpost, to the pursuit of bullets and screaming. What was more frequent than the gunfire was the flurry of abuse thrown at him for being a smooth skin and a warm blood. Hatchling! Concord! Tancred shouted the call sign as he neared the clearing the Astral Wardens had created. With call sign and countersign recognized, Tancred burst out from the scrub and dove behind a rock. Dr. Valen was already there with a shotgun in hand. Fafnir was aiming his frost cannon back the way Tancred came. The High Paladin readied his submachine gun, flicking the safety off. There was quiet, with nothing but the sounds of the valley bouncing off the mountain walls. The wait before the fight was always the worst part, knowing that this could be your last moment. A single round burst through the tree line, smacking into Fafnir's body. The Zen reeled back with a grunt, letting forth a burst from the frost cannon. At the same time, the blue sword surged from the tree line, screaming and waving an axe above her head. A few of the energy bolts grazed her limbs, but it only slowed her down. Carla's shotgun roared as she put a round of buckshot into the sword's stomach, dropping it instantly. Tancred dragged Fafnir behind the rock under a hail of gunfire. Jamie charged into the scrub, hobbling with Tancred's sword in hand, aiming for the gunner that was focused on his companions. The farmer made a wide cleave as the shocked-looking lizard man spun to face him. It parried with the pistol, knocking the firearm away. From beneath his jacket, the sword produced a glass bottle and smashed it across Jamie's jaw. Jamie staggered back and flourished the sword wildly. When he recovered and was ready for the next bout, he saw the sword on the ground. It clutched its throat and sputtered, choking. Blood spilled from between its clawed fingers. Jamie screamed in horror. "Help him! I'll get to the boy!" Tancred barked the order to Valen as he moved through the clearing. The thick branches were thrown aside as the paladin came up on the sight. "Did you—"
"I'm so sorry, my lord. I didn't mean to, honest. He hit me with the bottle and I just went back and..."
"Calm yourself. The first kill is always the hardest. You must show mercy now. Finish him."
What? What you mean?"
Every moment that this bastard is alive is agony. You wield a sword, you must deal with the consequences.
"But..."
Tancred clasped his hands over Jamie's as they gripped the sword. The High Paladin forced the tip of the blade between the sword's ribs. There was a final gasp and a gurgle, then it went still. Jamie went as pale as snow and stumbled back. He covered his face with his shivering hands. Being a warrior isn't always about saving the day and slaying monsters. Most of our work is this, killing some people so that others may live. But you protected your own, and the High Paladin's encouragement was cut short by Jamie retching and spewing the contents of his stomach on a tree. "That's just the fight leaving you. Come, we should see how the others fared." Dr. Valen was cleaning a wound from the Zen's shoulder. Fafnir was holding the sword's axe in his good hand, twirling it about. Tancred gave a hand sign to check if he was alright. "Just a flesh wound. My pride is hurt more than anything else."
High Paladin, what about that one?
The scientist nodded towards the blue sword that had curled up in on itself.
Passed out from the pain. Remember what you told us he was saying? Others know about us here. Should we...
Stabilizer, lock him up somewhere. We need them to talk. The High Paladin and Zen carried the wounded sword over their shoulders to the shelter. One of the extensions of the shelter was turned into a makeshift cell. It was nothing more than rock floor and a log wall. Dr. Valen soaked the frostbitten limbs in warm water. The removal of the buckshot was slow and agonizing work in the dirty environment, with a patient that was writhing in pain. Thankfully, the wounds weren't too deep. The sword's big, frilly dress had dampened the impact of the pellets. Tancred bound the sword's hands together with a seatbelt from their drop pods. The raiders came prepared to take hostages, carrying manacles, fetters, and shackles. They were used to secure the would-be raider. The spirits in the camp were dampened that night. Jamie had retreated in on himself, not talking and hardly eating. Fafnir was in a rage, seemingly furious with himself getting wounded. It seemed the only one unfazed by the combat was Tancred, who'd taken an ammunition bandolier from the dead Sword as his prize. The High Paladin placed the beer bottle that cracked Jamie's jaw in front of him. "I was gonna drink this, but I think you might need it more than me." Jamie barely nodded his head in thanks to the High Paladin. Tancred went to the would-be cell and threw the door open. "You better not be dead in here." The Sword was conscious and huddled in a corner. The torchlight gave the vertical pupils of the reptilian human an eerie look. Even bound and wounded, a Sword was still dangerous. Their fingernails were long talons, sharp enough to cut through flesh and muscle alike. "Start talking. Who are you? How'd you find us? Who do you work for?" The Sword glared and hissed at the Paladin, flicking her forked tongue. Tancred folded his arms and raised an eyebrow. "Don't have to talk? That's fine. We have other ways to do this. You ever seen a Sword without scales?" The Sword roared and launched herself at Tancred. The binding around her neck went taut as she lurched back. "Now, I don't know much about you lot. From what I've heard, that's like scalping a baser human like myself. Excruciatingly painful. Very slow death. Now, if you wanted to talk, we could avoid that altogether. I'll let you think on this." The High Paladin left the prisoner in their cell, sliding a stick across a rudimentary door to act as a lock.
"It is our duty to treat all with the utmost respect, no matter the colour of their blood or their creed."
"What?" Jamie was kneeling by the door, packing dirt against the wood to reinforce it.
"Is that not what the tenants say?"
"Those who do harm to an innocent are my enemy, and they shall be met with the retribution of all they have harmed." Tancred did not hesitate to counter Jamie's interpretation of the text the Astral Wardens emulated and lived by. "Do not mistake the stranger for the innocent. This one just tried to kill us today, and we retaliated. We have to do what we must to know the enemy and make sure they won't bring further harm." Tancred walked away to get some sleep, but he stopped to look over his shoulder. "Wait, how do you know the words of the tenets of the universe?"
"I read it about 30-40 times."
"You can read?" The next morning, Jamie opened the cell door and looked inside.
"Hello there, miss. Did you sleep well?"
The Sword said nothing, but glared at the blonde-haired boy. He held a carved wooden plate laden with some pieces of cooked animals, bits of squirrel and rat and other animals they'd managed to scavenge.
"I hope you're hungry. It's not much, but we're doing our best to..."
If you're not going to kill me, just get it over with already.
"I beg your pardon."
You bring me a great dishonor by keeping me caged here. If your spines had any metal in them, you would give me a warrior's death."
Jamie could feel the blood leaving his head. He placed the plate on the floor and slumped against the wall.
I didn't mean to kill your friend. I am so sorry."
He died an honorable death in combat. I will not mourn him.
"But he was your friend, weren't he?"
Life and death are part of everyday life on this planet. You come from the inner worlds, and you grow fat and happy.
Jamie looked down at himself. He was neither of those things at the moment. He was often happy, but he's never been fat.
"So, you know where we are?"
And you don't. Did you space knights fly all the way out here with no idea where you were heading?
"I'm just a farmer. I don't know nothing about no spaceships or planets."
If you're not going to kill me, then leave me in peace.
"I know that's what you want, but I can't do that. The Lord wants you to tell him some things."
The Sword woman grabbed the plate and turned away. Jamie stared at the woman for a few moments before deciding to leave.
"My name's Jamie, by the way. Jamie Green."
The prisoner didn't respond, leaving a downcast Jamie to go back to working in the crops.
"What, Chief?" We have a problem.
Fafnir called from the depths of the cavern that the Astral Wardens had been digging out. Tancred saw the Zen pulling away scraps of rock and dirt. The shale gave way to a black, flat stone wall.
Brickwork.
Tancred nodded in agreement as he placed his palm on the rock. So many questions ran through his head as he rapped his knuckles on the bricks. Who put them there? How old were they? But the most important question, what was on the other side?
Well, alright. I suppose one of those would have turned up eventually.
They both turned to see Dr. Varlin with her electronic pad. She walked up to the brick wall and inspected it.
The archaeotechs used to seed planets with bunkers like this while they terraformed them. It was a way for them to ensure that as soon as the process was complete, they would have a strong presence on the planet.
Time forbid it's a trap.
A trap.
Are you asking what the definition of a trap is? Think of it like you are a fly and there is a honey pot and...
No. Tell me how in the name of the spirits are ancient tombs trapped? Seeded caches like these are troves for archaeotech. Sometimes the bugs kill the occupants and make it their nest. Or worse, the traitor machines see it as a way to kill spelunkers and take their data to the Nexus.
And what if it is a cache filled with warriors? There are reports of entire towns on the Rimworld opening a cache and being slaughtered by ancient archaeotech super soldiers.
Slow down. Are you saying the archaeotechs terraformed the entire galaxy, and insectoids and mechanoids are using their caches as traps?
Yes? What about that is confusing?
The doctor wandered back into the light of day to continue her research. Avoid digging this way for now. Dig southwards towards the river. Tancred piled several rocks back up on the wall, as if reburying it would hide all their problems.
Why are these furthers so strange? I should have stayed in the Ottocan Nebula fighting the Eurasians.
The tunnels were put off limits to everyone but Tancred until further notice. The four of them did their best to keep the colony growing. Another shack was built, a place for them to eat and relax in peace. Jamie continued to forage for berries and herbs. Fafnir's bridge was steadily making progress. However, a sizable part of the forest had been torn down in its construction. Tancred worked hard to keep the larder full of fresh game, but food was scarce in the mountains. The fresh meals were often a smattering of mixed pieces of rat, squirrel, boar, and potatoes.
So, I have to know.
Jamie stared at the Zen as they sat down to eat dinner.
You have to know what?
Well, it's just that, I gotta know if... Boy, don't ask it.
But my lord, when else am I gonna get to ask a question like this?
Do you know how many bar fights I have seen started by the exact question you're about to ask?
It is alright, War Chief. If the young pup wants to know something, I'll do what I can to. Does your tail wag when you're happy?
Tancred groaned and slammed his head against the table they'd made. Jamie looked up at Fafnir with a childlike innocence. The Zen's ear twitched in annoyance. He let out a heavy sigh.
Jamie, have you heard of this thing called racism? What? No, it's not racist. If it's what? An alien? No, it's not like that. I swear. I just wanted to ask you something about how you...
I have news.
The doctor barged into the cabin, disturbing the tense standoff.
After analyzing the cetaceous faster-than-light travel paths, as well as local planetary bodies, I have ascertained that we are on the planet of Abraxas.
Shit. Both the farmer and the Zen exchanged confused looks.
My translation guide tells me that, for you, Fafnir, your species have designated this planet as Zoria Muamar.
By the spirits, no. What's Braxis?
Abraxas is one of the few known planets where plasteel is a naturally occurring alloy beneath the surface. It's no small wonder then that every galactic power has been battling it out to claim the planet for themselves. The Eurasian Republic, the Empire of Pusnos, the Zen Monarchy.
Zen Teshkala.
Yes, what he just said. Plus you have all the independent systems, local governments, pirate warlords, insectoids, and the crater machines.
There might also be some sort of intelligent species indigenous to the planet. While I was out hunting, I found a set of footprints that are unlike any race I know. And I also found these.
The Zen placed a series of minuscule flint-headed arrows on the table. They were too small even for a human child to use. Carla picked one up and looked at it closely.
Fascinating. I would very much like to study the natives here.
My lords, my lady, you didn't mention a temple at all. We're a whole folk.
There was an attempt at founding a temple on Abraxas. However, something happened to our presence here 300 years ago. Tancred glared at Fafnir with pure hatred. The Zen responded in kind, scowling and rolling his jowls back.
High Paladin, be at ease. The Zen Monarchy and the Astral Wardens signed a peace treaty with open border agreement for the Crusades of mutual interest a long time ago. Your accusations are...
Let's build one.
That's what?
If there's no temple here on Braxis, we should build one. Looks like we were going to be here a long time looking for the relics and looking for the rest of the wardens.
Absolutely not. Our sacred duty is to serve the Temple of New Thebes. That temple is the heart of our order and the very embodiment of what we stand for. I will not abandon my post.
You know, it's not actually an entirely illogical idea. Without spacecraft, this crusade is stranded. Having a centralized position in this sector, where we can establish a presence on the galactic frontier, and a new front to launch crusades could actually be beneficial.
But New Thebes, War Chief Tancred, I've seen firsthand how your order operates both on and off the battlefield. Your logistical systems rival that of the Zen Teshkala in terms of efficiency. I am sure as soon as the temple on your homeworld was attacked, the other chapters would have launched ships laden with warriors, aid, and workers. New Thebes will be okay. Tancred mulled over the idea as the doctor poured herself a cup of water. There was a look of determination slowly painting itself across his face. The High Paladin rose to his feet and raised his cup. Well then, Astral Wardens, a toast to the Abraxas Temple.
To the Abraxas Temple.
The three of them clinked their cups of water together. They spent the night planning out the layout for their new temple. Jamie and Fafnir celebrated by constructing a rudimentary chess table. The black squares were scratched in with a knife, and pieces of scrap wood and stone were used as the pieces. Compared to the technocratic luxury of the temple on New Thebes, having a light, clean drinking water and a table of rock chess was extremely primitive. But there was still a sense of pride in their rustic setup, and the mind games chess entailed were much more tempting than the games of horseshoes. It was the only thing to stop them from going insane. Where did they get those horseshoes from? Don't worry about it. Just be glad that the crash landers of the Astral Wardens were mostly alive, mostly fed, and mostly determined to see their mission through.